Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in again for another episode. Today we've got kind of a tackle review day. I just finally got my hands on some of the Berkeley Powerbait Gillies. This little guy is something that has been out now for several months. You can get them around different places, but I finally just got my first couple packs, and I took them out fishing a couple of days ago just to try to experiment with them, to try to figure out what rigging setups were the best, what are the ways I can utilize the Ghillie to achieve the most success. And that's what I want to talk about today. I've got a couple of things that I don't really like about it, a couple of things that I love about it, and a couple of techniques and rigging styles that I think solve some of the issues that I don't really like about it. So let's get into that. Before I do want to remind you guys that if you're looking to support the channel, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link. It's a great way to show your support for the channel, and it's very much appreciated. Okay, also, if you watch the videos on a regular basis and haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. It really is another good way to show your support for the channel, and that's also very much appreciated. All right, so we've got the Berkeley Gilly here. This comes in multiple different sizes. The one that I've got here is the 90mm size right here. It's a little guy. So a couple of things right off the bat that I really like about it. The motion on this is pretty incredible when you compare it to other swim baits. The way they built this with all these different little ridges and ribs allows the bait to move super freely. It also, in my opinion, looks extremely lifelike, not just from how it swims in the water, but when you look at it in the water, it's almost like you see each of these as scales. So it's really lifelike looking. It's just it's probably one of the best bluegill mimicking baits that I've seen on the market. It's just so lifelike. You can get some of the colors, like this is the HD color, HD bluegill color. Just so lifelike. It really is impressive. So right off the bat, that was one of the things that I noticed while I was using it. It just swims so good. A couple of things that I found that I didn't like about it, though, were the fact that from a rigging standpoint, it's a little bit different to rig because you have so much movement in the back 2/3 of the bait that you got to have certain techniques or different rigging styles to get this bait to run true. And they do a good job. In the package, if you look underneath this little header in the package, it shows you different ways to rig the baits. But I've got a few things that I can do to help with some of the rigging techniques that they state in the package. So right off the bat, that was one of the things. Like, you don't want to hinder the action. So like if you want to Texas rig this, you don't want to put, say, a 4/0 hook in here, which is going to run down to the back end of the tail, because you're going to lose all of your action. So it's a little bit different to rig. One of the other issues, you can see this bait I probably caught, I'm going to say, a half dozen fish on, and you can see how the paint scheme is coming off. So that's some sort of, it looks probably like a dip, I'm assuming, that they use, but after some wear and tear, that definitely comes off. But again, that's a good thing. Like, I didn't have any wear and tear until I had the fish's teeth marks in it. So, just from casting around, I didn't lose any color, but I did definitely, once I was catching fish on it, I started to lose color, which happens with a lot of hard baits. Doesn't really happen much with plastics because we're not used to having such really lifelike paint schemes on the packages. The other thing that I noticed was a lot of them, with the certain rigging styles you had, you would tend to tear up the nose on the baits pretty good. So if you fish as a drop shot, you'll go through quite a few of them, and they're not super cheap. When you think about a pack, you get 4 per pack. So you want to do things that aren't going to allow you to lose the bait much. But if you're catching fish and you're nose hooking, you're going to lose some baits. So those are the downsides. Now, those downsides really are only downsides if you're catching fish. So to me, I would rather catch fish than have the downsides, and have the downsides than not have the downsides and not catch any fish. But here's a couple of things. So these are my favorite ways to rig the baits. Let's go over each one. The first is just with a standard, well, it's actually, this is a wacky rig head. So if I take one of these out of the package, one of the things I like, this hook I really found to like a lot. This is the Fusion 19 weighted wacky weedless weighted wacky, but it's got a wide gap hook on it, and most wacky rigs, weighted wacky rigs, are shorter shank hooks, which I like, because in this case with the 90mm one, I don't want a hook shank to come way back here. So when I hooked, let me rig one up for you. So when I, just thread it onto the hook shank is about right. The other thing that I really like about it, so because it's a wide gap hook and the shape of the bluegill starts to angle up as that hook gets threaded in, the hook really fits nice when you thread it on. So I really like that. You get a decent amount of gap, but I still have a ton of hook that comes down into the main body of the bluegill. And that's something that I found that really worked well. The jig head allowed me to fish it down a little bit deeper, allowed me to bounce it around, and the fact that it's a weedless wacky rig hook allowed me to, bring it through cover and bounce it through logs. It really worked well. That's one of the ways I really enjoyed working it, because I could fish it more like a jig. You'd get the bait to come up and turn on its side and flutter back down to the bottom, glide to the bottom. So that was one of the ways I like to rig it. The next way that I really probably was potentially the most successful for me was as a drop shot. And you get a ton of good lifelike action out of it as a drop shot. It's a phenomenal bed bait, but it's a really good bait too. Like I had a couple of fish that I caught off bluegill beds, and this was a bait I threw in there where I just had it on the drop shot and I just popped it around, and it looked like a dying bluegill amongst the other bluegill, and I caught a couple of bass doing that. So it'll work really good on beds. It'll work really good if you've got specific structure that you're fishing, and it'll work really well if you have bluegill beds. Now here's one tip with this though, and this is something I do with a lot of my other drop shot baits to prolong the life of the drop shots. I'll take something like this decoy worm holder screw and cut a little tiny portion off and thread it in the nose. So I don't know if you can see it. I left a little bit sticking out for you. Right on the nose. So I've actually got a piece of that spring down through the whole front of the nose. And because of that, when I go to rig this, so you can see them sticking out on both sides if I pull on it. Hopefully you can see that. But that really helps. That helps with all drop shots. It's not just something specific to the ghillie that I like to do, but I do it with a lot of my other drop shots, where it just basically prevents the bait from being pulled off. Because when you pull on the bait, you're really pulling on the spring at that point, and the whole spring needs to be ripped out in order to get that out of the front of the nose. So that helps prolong the life of your ghillies, because now you're not really nose hooking. You still are nose hooking, but you're not going to pull the hook right out of the nose hook. The other way I really like to fish this was as a line through swim bait. So in this case, I lost my straw. Took my straw. So I used just some of these like mixing straws, and I slid it down, just pushed it right through the bait. So it's just like that. You can see it sticking out on the nose. And then I just run the line through it and tie your treble hook on. I've got videos. I'll show you how to make, I've got videos showing you how to make that. I'll attach that into the end of the video here. But from this standpoint, this is another really good way to prolong the life of your ghillie, because you've got that line through, the straw down through it, and the bait just slides up and down. But this is probably the most natural way to get the action out of the bait, and it was also another really good way to fish it. You can add some weight by either putting a nail weight in the belly or putting a small bullet weight on the front of the line before you thread it through the straw, if you so choose to do that, if you want a little bit more depth. But all three of these rigging techniques were what I found to be the most successful for the ghillie. They worked great. I really like this bait. Like, I think it's going to shine around bluegill beds. I think it's going to shine on fishing bedding fish, and I think it'll shine just kind of fishing around docks and, you know, fishing it as a swim bait. So in the few hours I fished with it, like I said, I caught like a half dozen fish. I had a couple other fish that definitely showed interest in it. So it's something that I'm going to work into my arsenal. I think you guys should check them out too. I'm not going to lie with you, I was kind of skeptical when I first saw it, but I'm much more impressed actually having them in my hand now. These little guys are really cool baits. Super cool. So yeah, check them out, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the review. If you did, hit the like button, share it on your social media, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and stay tuned. Another video coming out tomorrow.